Okay, so this is Ironforge. This is one of my most recent maps that I've been able to bring into release candidate. Um, and this is also my first dual map for Doombringer. Um, that I started development back in January of this year, so it's been more or less a year getting to this point. Um, and it's at a point that I'm very happy with. Um, there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of small things that have changed about it, even if the general layout stayed the same. And there's been little bits I've learned from making this map. Um, there's been a lot kind of going on around it, and it's been interesting. I think I like to think this map is quite good, and it seems like other people seem to think that. Um, and there's specific aspects of it that I think kind of work nicely. In a sense, I guess I would say this map is almost a bit like Cure and Quake Live. It feels a lot smaller just because of the way that Doombringer's movement works, but for the most part, it's kind of a circular map, and you play a bit slower on it than on other maps. And I think that is something that makes it unique compared to other Doombringer maps. Because most other Doombringer maps, not Duel 1 really, Duel 2, Duel 3, so on, those maps are all very fast-paced, and they feel sometimes a bit more like CPM maps, I think, than like the kind of slower, Quake Live kind of thing. So I think working within the things that Doombringer has, and making something that to a degree only works in Doombringer, but still kind of plays like slightly slower, and you have to make like deliberate, conscious decisions and stuff. Is that was something that I wanted to go for, just because there wasn't that much of it. But yeah. So I want to start here with the red armor spawn, because this is the part of the map that I made first, and I think it's kind of what made me decide to go with like the way the map is now, to a degree. I don't know if that makes sense, but like this is a starting point that I kind of just made. It influenced, I think, the direction of the whole map in terms of all the different elements that I put into it. So it's a very important part of the map, and I also think it's just kind of like the most unique part, just because of the way that it's laid out. Like red armor being at the bottom there with the big lava pit. I think I think that having like simplistic geometry where there's just like a jump with a lava pit in the middle or something, I think those types of things tend to be quite cool. It's doing a lot with not much, which is something that I think is very valuable in level design. Just trimming all the fat and making the most minimalist version of the thing that you can. So, yeah, it's across this gap here. And then I have these pillars. I do really like pillars just as a set piece. I think they're really nice. And this room in particular, kind of inspired by Furious Heights. The pillars themselves, like the middle of the map, with the red armor spawn. You have these pillars that are above, this red armor, and the red armor's in a very like exposed position. But also, I think a bit inspired by the rail spawn on Furious Heights. Just the way that the room is kind of laid out, that you come in from one side. It's all very, like, you have an item at the end of the room, and then it's like, oh, you have to play at range onto it, or whatever. if I'm taking the item, it's way riskier than you know, just committing through this doorway or something, or not committing, but like it's sitting in this doorway, shooting rockets, shooting rails, you know, nade spam, that kind of thing. I think that's an aspect of the railgun run that's very interesting. So that's a thing that I wanted to have here, because I think it influences the dynamic of the map in a very nice way, and it also kind of it makes the circle across the map, I think, a bit more. It's like a bit shorter, because you have a room here, but it's not like you have to go across the entire room. Like, you don't have to go in a big C shape to get round. So you can kind of rotate, you know, into this doorway and not really enter this room much, and go this way instead. Which I think is a nice thing to have, just to make the high ground a bit more good, I guess. In terms of the weapon spawns, this was the first weapon I put on the map. One of the things that came up when I was talking to one player about designing the map is that one of the devs really likes pillars because he likes like sitting behind it and then shooting someone with the super shotgun as they come round. So that was that was kind of the thing that put the thought in my head that, like, oh, this is clearly where the super shotgun should go. And you know, it's quite a good weapon on any map, but in this specific position especially, it's really good. It also makes it so that if someone spawns in this room, I don't remember where the spawns are. I think there's one here, but I don't know about. The closest low ground spawn is like down here, but you know, and then there's one here as well, but that's a bit less relevant. If you kill someone in this room, but like you're low, and they spawn in, like here or whatever, and you go for red, you know, they have the super shotgun and they can immediately kind of retaliate on you, which I think makes it like a weak area in a very interesting way, where you have to kind of play your fights a bit more carefully and make sure that you're not taking a shit ton of damage, because, you know, otherwise you might get destroyed immediately after grabbing red. This lava pit catches a lot of people just because of the way it's positioned. It's just about deep enough that you're swimming, you're not just walking. And, you know, if you fall in on this side, it can be very difficult to get to this side. It also, I think, makes it so that little things like splash are a bit more dangerous here. You know, if I go up here and there's someone on this like catwalk thing or whatever, and I hit a rocket down there, you know, good chance it blasts you off into the lava pit and you take a lot of damage. Which, you know, again, it's a thing that makes the pickup more dangerous, which I think makes it more interesting. It's a very, yeah, it's a very dangerous position. But I think that it characterizes it in a nice way. Another thing to note, this lava is deep enough that you can do the LG discharge thing. So that's another thing that's quite interesting to me, anyways, is that as a last resort you can do that, and, you know, you can try and get your opponent with it. Especially considering that up top here is an LG ammo. You know, you can grab it and then drop down, and then if, you know, someone with a shit ton of health gets too close to you, you can immediately just kill yourself in the lava, and the hitbox might kill the other person as well, which I think is it's interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say good, because I know there are people who will make arguments against it, and I mean, it's kind of a subjective thing, but again, I just think that the lava pit characterizes this area in a very interesting way, and, you know, really messes with how people play around it, which ultimately I think can only be a good thing. You know, adding variety into the way that people play things, adding, you know, kind of this level of conscious thought to be like, okay, what if this happens? What should I do? You know, those are all things that I think are very nice in particularly, you know, competitive arena FPS level design. You know, those are things that I enjoy quite a lot about this genre, is making people make those decisions, forcing people to think in advance, you know, just kind of deepening it, kind of like a chess match, I guess. But yeah, that's the red armor spawn. So the yellow armor spawn, I was kind of inspired by Cure to a degree with this room. It kind of reminded me a bit of the red armor spawn on Cure initially when I was going through, in that you have this high ground position up here that kind of cuts through a lot of the room. This pillar used to go up to... Oh no, it wasn't that one. It was this one, I think, used to go up to the top of the room, which is where there's still this bit here, which kind of reduced the sight a bit, you know, gave people on the ground a bit more of a position to hide in from the high ground. You know, this telly taking you up top, all that kind of thing, I thought was... I think the red armor room in Cure is very interesting, so that's kind of, you know, those are things I wanted to recreate, and that's kind of how I went about recreating it. The order that I made the map in, this was the room that I made last, and I was kind of struggling a bit to figure out, you know, what I wanted to do with this. So initially, this was kind of like down a level, like kind of down on this level, and then coming in, you'd have come in this way, and it was something that I was really struggling to figure out that that I felt like was nice geometry wise. So I eventually kind of settled on having this just kind of mess of platforms down here, where I don't know, it was like along this line there was a drop, and there's like a jump up here, and then it's like there's a drop along this line, so you have to jump up this way, and it was very awkward. It made this room kind of awful to fight in, just because there was so much, so many like tiny changes in height that you couldn't just walk up. You had to physically jump. That, you know, I could be stood here, and someone stood here is gonna be like fuck, and you know, take a rocket and get knocked off really bad. You know, same thing here. One very irritating thing was jumping up to the site level, and then immediately after up to the site level. So, yeah. Another thing, that I thought was really nice about this room was, this teleporter coming out this way. I wanted to kind of draw inspiration from Arrow Walk a bit here. You know, Arrow Walk has the teleporter on mid that takes you to above the grenade launcher, and you kind of jump out. And I thought that was a very fun aspect of that map. So, for this teleporter, I wanted it to take you to a position where you could immediately jump out. Initially there was something like buggy with this teleporter, that, because it was at like an angle, it was really weird, and that was a thing that we found while we were testing the early versions, so that was a thing that I guess was a bug that had to be fixed or something. I don't really know the details of it, but it was a weird thing, but I did eventually, they did eventually fix the bug. So this is now kind of like, it feels a lot nicer, because it would be that you would jump out and like lose all your speed and you'd fall into the lava. Speaking of the lava, I thought that was an interesting little bit. That's another thing that gets a lot of people, particularly if you fall in the lava this side. It's not deep enough to swim in, but it's still very dangerous if you get knocked down here, just because of how big the space is, and because you have to go kind of the full distance to get back up, and to get health. So I thought that worked quite nicely in terms of just making the room a bit more dangerous. And I think both of the bits of lava on this map kind of, you know, characterize it in an interesting way, where I think now to a degree this map is kind of known for those moments where someone falls in lava. There's a few maps that have lava, but none of them are really as punishing as it is on this map, and I think it's another thing that, to a degree, requires you to position quite carefully, and I think that's quite interesting. So, yeah. These ramps, I thought were very interesting, just in terms of, you know, you can kind of cut along the stairs here, and usually you do, if there's no one in the room. You can just, like, do this. And it usually gets you over here a little bit faster than if you were to take the stairs, I think. And it's just a fun little jump. But I think also, sometimes you see people making, like, pushes along this way, jumping up this way to cut out, like, you know, moving as far and putting them in a high ground position, like, immediately. Even if it's not much. You know, it's a good position to try and hit someone with a rocket, with a super shotgun blast, that kind of thing. And so that's a tiny bit of height variation that I ended up keeping in, because I thought it made the map a lot more interesting. Yeah. For the most part, this is kind of, I guess it's the least important, like, large room. It's not really that it's, like, a bad position to be in, because it's often, like, out of control. You can come to this room, you know, you can take this yellow, that kind of thing. But it tends to see a little bit less play, just because the items in here aren't quite as important as they are in other rooms, which I think is fine. It's okay. And you do see this room kind of as a transitional area. Again, you have this teleporter, you can jump out this way, you can jump out the other way, and they both give you quite good positions. So, it's a nice little transitional space, and it also has, like, this yellow armor, which is good, because, it gives this room, like, a purpose. And this 50, actually, this 50, I think, is a very interesting, how you have to, like, drop through here to grab it. It's another thing that I think is cool about this room, so, yeah, I'm quite happy with it, even if it's, like, not necessarily as good, quote unquote, of a room as the other ones are. So, yeah. Okay, so the mega room. I guess this is kind of the most important bit of the map, I guess you could say. There's a lot here positionally that is quite good. You know, you can go through to both rooms from a high ground position. You can stand here, and you can deny Mega, and then immediately rotate to this position and deny Red, which is a very strong thing to have. You know, you have this one rail ammo, which is the only one on the map, so it's kind of important that you control it, and, you know, you can from this position. And you also have LG here, which is a good weapon on this map. You know, this room very open. If you hit someone with LG, you can very easily push them up against the wall. There's a lot of positions on this map that are fairly open, that LG is quite good for in general. So, lots of resources in this room, and I think to a degree, yeah, this is probably the most important one to control, just in terms of what it, you know, gives you. It's very strong. So yeah, this is another room that is kind of a weird, like, hybrid between, like, Cure and Delirium from Quake Live, I guess. The Mega Spawn particularly, you know, on Delirium, the Mega Spawn's in this, like, little cubby that you can stand over, and that was a thing that I thought was interesting, positionally. So I created something similar for this map, where, you know, you have like this big C-shaped room that you can stand over everything, and, you know, you have sight over a lot of different things in this position. Apart from the other side of the high ground, I thought that limiting the sightline there was quite interesting, and also made it a bit, you know, a bit less of a headache, I guess. just because you have more access to the things in this room, and you can walk in without usually immediately taking a rail if someone stood here. So it just makes it a little bit safer to, you know, exist on the high ground and contest if someone else is on the high ground but on the opposite side, that kind of thing. These crates, aesthetically, I'm really happy with. Initially, it was just like a big pillar, which I thought was really ugly, and I didn't know what to do. But I started kind of leaning a bit more into the E2M2 aesthetic once I was able to play it. And so, you know, there's these huge crates on E2M2 that I thought that would be a good fit for this map. So I made my own crates, and then, you know, having them on a crane, I thought was a nice little set piece that kind of, you know, it makes sense that it would be on this map, and also it's like a boxy sightline blocker that can exist in midair. So that was a very nice little thing. And also having this here makes this spot even sneakier, because these little cables you can actually shoot through. So there's moments where you can do things like this, where you can kind of stand here and span through. It's a very, like, limited sight line, which I think is quite interesting. Just that kind of weird trap that forces you to think creatively. You know, I like that kind of thing, provided it doesn't get too silly. I don't think this is too silly, considering the small angle that you get. It's not like it's super powerful. You're not really going to see it too much. But, you know, those really crazy little, like, clutch moments you have on these maps where it's like, oh, this is a weird position, and then they, you know, they shoot a rocket this way, and it hits directly, and then, you know, the crowd goes nuts because it was a crazy rocket that nobody would have expected to land, that kind of thing. I think it's quite cool. I thought that this little area was interesting. Initially, this part of the area with the jump pad didn't exist, and you were kind of forced to stand by Mega and jump over here to take the slugs. But that ended up, I think, being kind of like, I guess, just not good. It was a little bit unfair and felt kind of difficult if you were out of control with this position. You know, you could consistently deny it, and it would make it really difficult for someone to get back into the game, because you'd be able to take the rail ammo, and then they use up all their rails, and you can just, like, continue doing it because they don't have anything. So I thought that having the jump pad there was quite nice. And it also kind of doubled as a way to make the transitions in height level on this map a bit nicer. Just, you know, giving another position to get up onto this middle ground, which I think is a little bit nicer, rather than it just being kind of a one-way thing and ruining the flow of the map to a degree. You know, now you can go around in a big C shape, more or less, which I think is a little bit nicer. This drop down here doesn't actually see much use, just because it's kind of weird and there's not a lot of use cases for it. But I still think it's a cool thing that you can drop down and potentially sneak up on someone. Or you can just do like this rotation where you take the telly and then you drop down and grab LG, you know, that kind of thing. Which also I think is quite nice. So it's an interesting little teleporter. Over here, I have the default shotgun. Initially, this was just a shotgun ammo next to the red, but I think having the normal shotgun there is a bit more interesting, because what happens now is there's only one shotgun ammo pack on the map, and it's this very small one. So the way that this shotgun would end up being used is that, you know, you get the super shotgun, and the super shotgun is very useful. It's a very widely versatile weapon, and then you use it up. And you can take this shotgun as well, and you get more ammo for it. You get, like, the amount of ammo that you get if you don't have a weapon when you pick it up. So it gives you, you know, it's functionally a big shotgun ammo when you pick it up for the first time. And then you only have this this tiny cache of shells, which kind of forces you to control it. Which I think is a very interesting aspect of the map. It's kind of a part of Doombringer that I think in general is very interesting, is having to play around those ammos just because of the reduced rate that weapons you already have give you ammo. So that's something that I like to try and, you know, put in my maps when I can, you know, as well as with this rail slug box that forces you to control it, and to a lesser degree this LG box as well, this cell box. So yeah, I thought that was an aspect of the map that was quite nice. Beyond all those things, the aesthetic, like I said, it's very inspired by E2M2, which isn't out at the moment, but I'm assuming that it will be soon, because there's, like, decent progress on it. But, if you can't play the early version of the second episode for whatever reason, like, you just don't have a copy, or you don't have permission for it, or whatever, you'll just have to wait and see what I mean. But I thought that it was something that was thematically comparable, and I was a bit like, why didn't I do any of this? So, you know, using some of the techniques from that map, detail-wise, very much, I think, got this map in a very nice state, and made it kind of a little bit more unique, because the older versions are, like, very, very bland looking, whereas this is, you know, it's a bit more colourful, it's a bit more vibrant, and it's got a particular aesthetic that I think is pretty nice, even if it is, to a degree, kind of borrowed from E2M2. Trying to think, what else is there to say about this map? I think that's more or less everything. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I don't know how I typically do these outros, but, I don't know. Maybe I'll just cut myself off at the end of the video, because that would be funny. Possibly. You know. Anyways, yeah. Thank you.